And in this episode of Ahsoka, we are back to the slow pacing of the first few episodes. Why do these showrunners try to turn what would otherwise be a 30-minute show into a nearly hour-long slog? It seems that for every one step forward in Disney Star Wars, it's 2 steps back. But does Ahsoka have any redeeming qualities? Join me, dear viewer, as I dive deeper into the dumpster fire that is Disney Star Wars. It seems that Disney has really run out of ideas for Star Wars, if they ever had any original ideas to begin with. Up until now, it seems that all roads led to that god-awful sequel trilogy. But the latest episode of Ahsoka finally gave us Lars Mikkelsen's take on Grand Admiral Thrawn. This is interesting because it could lead to an adaptation of the hyper-popular trilogy of books by Timothy Zahn. I'm not holding my breath because Disney has had a very spotty record for live-action adaptations of pretty much everything. There's certainly no Netflix One Piece, that's for sure. But I'm an eternal optimist who really can't ever foresee disappointment until it hits me in the face like the sequel trilogy did. In the 6th episode, the titular character Ahsoka is largely absent as we see what happens in another galaxy far, far away. It's revealed to us that the giant space whales travel to that galaxy in order to die. Basically, it's a giant space whale cemetery in that galaxy. So, unbeknownst to Ahsoka, she's on a one-way trip to another galaxy with no way to get home. I also love how Thrawn refers to them as space whales rather than their given name, the Purrgil. Even the characters within the show see how absurd that all is. It almost feels like Star Wars is now a parody of itself. Throughout the episode, we see a growing rift between Thrawn, the witches, Baylan Skoll, and Morgan Elsbeth as they're all looking to screw each other. This feels less like Star Wars and more like Gossip Girl in space. But I actually don't mind, as I'm rooting for a Baylan Skoll redemption arc, which may actually never come as Ray Stevenson has unfortunately passed away. This dynamic between the bad guys is the more interesting part of the episode, and the best part is we finally get to see Thrawn. It seems that the slow burn on the Thrawn character is meant to build up suspense. Instead, the episode is the return of bad directing and slow story progression like we saw in the first half of the season. If pacing was the show's biggest flaw, I don't think guys like Nerdrotic and the Critical Drinker would be complaining nearly as much. So what exactly is Ahsoka's biggest flaw? Well, in the 6th episode, we see Sabine on the final leg of her quest to find Ezra. She doesn't seem to question what Morgan's ultimate motives are, which was a bit annoying that she didn't have at least a bit of insight or curiosity. But I can chalk that up on her youth and inexperience, so that's no big deal, just a minor plot annoyance. It turns out that Morgan and Thrawn let her go in order to dispatch both her and Ezra together. Here we get our first taste of live-action Thrawn, which in my opinion is mostly good. The makeup and eyes seem to be a bit off, but Lars Mikkelsen's performance definitely showed a cunning villain displaying solid leadership skills. He knows that he's gotta be economical with his use of stormtroopers, as he mentions his numbers have dwindled in the days since the Empire. A villain that displays intelligence and good strategic thinking? Is this actually made by Disney? But seriously, we haven't gotten a well-written villain out of Disney since Thanos in the MCU, and pretty much no villain in Disney Star Wars was well-written. On her way to find Ezra, Sabine encounters a roving band of marauders, which she quickly dispatches. This is actually a scene that was done decently well. It shows her outmanned and outgunned, so she uses other tactics to subdue her enemies. Given her more formal training, she outmatched the gang with her lightsaber after being disarmed of her blasters. I would have preferred to see her using the Force a bit, but again, I'll chalk that up to youth and inexperience. Though to be fair, I'm glad the show didn't turn her into a full Mary Sue, so I have to give credit where credit's due. But as far as the reunion with Ezra goes, I show more emotion reuniting with my dog after not seeing him for a few hours than Sabine and Ezra showed in that whole episode. My god, this is just supremely bad directing. Ezra Bridger also has the emotional capacity of a wet plank of wood. I've never seen anyone act in a more bland way than Iman Esfandi did in this episode. But I guess it's better that we get Ezra Bridger and not Ezra Miller. What bothers most longtime Star Wars fans, and actually general audiences as a whole, is the lack of actual consequences in movies and TV shows lately. I mean, Sabine took a frickin' lightsaber to the gut and lived to tell about it. But the overarching theme here is that there's no real actual stakes. Ahsoka not even being mentioned in the original trilogy directly meant that she was going to die prior to the events of A New Hope, but now we see her on the other side of Return of the Jedi. If Disney Star Wars was written by someone with a brain, I would have expected to see at least a little exposition on her whereabouts throughout the original trilogy. Instead, we get nothing. Now, this all may be because Ahsoka is Dave Filoni's pet project, a character he's helped to create and evolve, but we see that clearly he's having a hard time letting go of her. However, the death of Ahsoka would complete a very full and rich character arc, and it can be done in a thoughtful and poignant way. So that's ultimately the $64,000 question with this show. Will Ahsoka die an honorable death and finish her arc, or will she live on to fight in a possible new Thrawn trilogy? The latter would be quite interesting, as it would bring up the possibility of retconning the garbage that was your sequel trilogy. Only time will tell. But what do you guys think of all this? Would you prefer a story arc with Ahsoka dying an honorable death, or a new trilogy of films with Thrawn as the menace and a retconning of the sequel trilogy? Please do let me know down below in the comments, and as always, hit that like button, ring that notification bell, and smash that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.